I'm looking at the woman across from me, Doctor. Sarah Chen, my biological aunt, and trying to process what she just said. The ballroom of the Harbor View Resort has gone completely silent. 100 guests, dressed in cocktail attire, are staring at the stage where my parents just tried to destroy my life. Let me back up. 2 hours ago, I thought tonight would be perfect. My name is Elena Rodriguez. I'm 28, and 3 months ago, David Park asked me to marry him. David comes from old money. His family owns a chain of luxury hotels across the West Coast. We met at a marketing conference 2 years ago, and despite our different backgrounds, we just clicked. He's kind, supportive, and genuinely doesn't care that I grew up in a modest 3-bedroom house in Sacramento while he summered in the Hamptons. Tonight was supposed to be our engagement party. David's parents insisted on hosting it at their resort, and they spared no expense. Ice sculptures, a live band, premium open bar, the works. The guest list was split evenly 50 from David's side, all country club members and business associates, and 50 from mine, mostly my parents' friends and distant relatives I barely knew. I was in the bridal suite getting ready when my younger sister Brittany came in. She looked pale. "Elena, I need to tell you something," she said, closing the door behind her. "Britt, what's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost." She sat down on the velvet settee, wringing her hands. "Mom and Dad. They're planning something. I heard them talking in the parking lot. They kept saying tonight's the night, and something about finally getting what they deserve." My stomach dropped. "What do you mean?" "I don't know exactly, but Elena, they've been acting weird for weeks. Ever since you announced the engagement, they keep making comments about David's family's money, about how you're moving up in the world. It's creepy." I should have listened to her. I should have called the whole thing off right then, but I didn't. I convinced myself Brittany was overreacting, that Mom and Dad were just excited about the wedding, maybe a little starstruck by David's family. I was so incredibly wrong. The party started beautifully. David's parents, Richard and Margaret Park, were gracious hosts. They'd even hired a professional photographer and videographer to document everything. The ballroom was decorated with thousands of white roses, my favorite. David looked stunning in his tailored navy suit, and when he introduced me to his extended family, I felt like I was floating. Then came the toasts. David's father went first, welcoming me to the family with genuine warmth. My heart swelled. Then my father, Robert, stood up. He tapped his champagne flute, and the room quieted. "Thank you all for being here tonight," he began, his voice carrying that false warmth I'd heard my entire life. "Margaret, Richard, we're so honored that our daughter is joining your family." I smiled, unsuspecting. "But before we go any further," Dad continued, "there's something important the Parks need to know. Something we recently discovered that changes everything." My smile froze. Next to me, David's hand found mine, confused. Mom walked up to join Dad on the small stage. She was holding a folder. My mother, Patricia, always had a flair for drama, but the look on her face now was pure calculation. 3 months ago," Mom said, projecting her voice across the silent room, "we received some troubling information. You see, we decided to do some genetic testing, family medical history, that sort of thing. For insurance purposes, no. What we discovered," Dad took over, opening the folder, "is that Elena is not our biological daughter." Gasps rippled through the crowd. I felt David's hand tighten around mine. His parents looked shocked, but my parents weren't done. "Now, we've known Elena was adopted since she was 5 years old," Mom continued, and I could hear the false sympathy in her voice. "Her real mother died. Tragic circumstances. We took her in out of the goodness of our hearts. But here's the thing," Dad said, pulling papers from the folder. "These DNA results revealed something else. Something the Parks deserved to know before legally binding their son to this girl." "This girl?" He called me this girl. "Elena's biological family has a documented history of severe mental illness," Mom announced. "Schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, depression, severe enough to require institutionalization. Her real mother was a patient at a psychiatric facility before she died." The room erupted. I couldn't breathe. David's mother covered her mouth with her hand. His father's face had gone hard. "We have medical records right here," Dad continued, waving more papers. "Genetic predisposition to psychotic breaks, hereditary mental instability. We thought the Parks deserved to know what they're getting into." I was going to be sick. This couldn't be happening. Not here. Not in front of everyone. And frankly, Mom said, her voice turning cold, given what we've invested in raising a child who isn't ours, a child with these kinds of genetic issues, we believe compensation is in order. There it was. The real reason, we're asking for $200,000, Dad stated flatly. Reimbursement for 23 years of expenses, medical costs, education. Consider it a dowry adjustment, given the circumstances. David's father stood up, his face purple. This is outrageous. You ambush us at an engagement party with accusations about mental illness and then demand money? We're simply being transparent, Mom said sweetly. Surely you'd want to know if there are hereditary issues before grandchildren come into the picture. I was shaking. Tears streamed down my face. Every eye in that ballroom was on me, judging, pitying, disgusted. David's arms were around me, but I could feel him tensing, could imagine what was going through his mind. You can verify everything, Dad said, walking down from the stage toward Richard Park. We have documentation, hospital records, psychiatric evaluations from when Elena was a child showing early signs of instability. I'd never been to a psychiatrist as a child. Never. This is insane, I whispered to David. None of this is true. We need to talk about this, David's mother said quietly, her voice tight. Richard, perhaps we should. The voice came from the back of the room. A woman stood up from one of the tables on my side of the guest list. She was in her early 50s, Asian, wearing a burgundy dress. I'd never seen her before in my life. I'm sorry to interrupt, the woman said, walking toward the stage with purpose, but I can't let this continue. My father's face went white. Actually white. Who are you? Richard Park demanded. The woman reached the stage and turned to face the crowd. My name is Dr. Sarah Chen. I'm a psychiatrist practicing in San Francisco, and I'm Elena's biological aunt. The room exploded again. I couldn't process what was happening. Biological aunt? I had family? Real family? That's impossible, my mother sputtered. You can't just… I can, and I am, doctor. Chen cut her off. Her voice was calm, but carried authority. I've been looking for Elena for 23 years. When I saw the engagement announcement in the newspaper 3 months ago, I recognized her immediately. She has her mother's eyes. She turned to look at me, and her expression softened. Your mother was my younger sister, Dr. Linda Chen. She was a psychiatrist, not a patient. She was brilliant, accomplished, and deeply loved. That's a lie, Dad said, but his voice cracked. Is it, doctor? Chen pulled out her phone. Because I have documentation of my own. Linda's medical license, her published research papers, photos of her at her hospital, receiving awards for her work. She held up the phone, swiping through images. I stared at the screen as she walked closer to me. There was a woman who looked exactly like me, just older. Same dark hair, same eyes, same smile. She was standing in a hospital, wearing a white coat, holding a plaque. Your mother died in a car accident when you were 5, doctor. Chen continued, her voice gentler now. She was driving home from a late shift at the hospital. A drunk driver hit her head-on. She died instantly. I remember, I whispered. The words came out of nowhere. I remember a song. She used to sing me a song at bedtime. Chen's eyes filled with tears. She began to hum, then sing softly. You are my sunshine, my only sunshine. The memory hit me like a physical blow. My mother, my real mother, tucking me in, her soft voice, the way she'd stroke my hair. How had I forgotten? Linda named you Elena after our grandmother, Doctor, Chen said. And your father, my brother-in-law, Michael Rodriguez, was a civil engineer. He died 2 years before Linda, in a construction accident. You probably don't remember him. This is ridiculous, Mom said, but she was backing away. Security, get this woman out of here. I wouldn't do that if I were you, doctor, Chen said calmly. Because I also have evidence of fraud. You see, when Linda died, she left behind a substantial life insurance policy, $500,000, to be held in trust for Elena until she turned 18. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. I was out of the country when Linda died, doing research in Japan. Dr. Wanave, Chen continued. By the time I got back to the States, Elena had disappeared into the foster system. I spent years trying to find her, but the records had been mishandled. She turned to face my parents directly. Until 3 weeks ago, when I hired a private investigator. Would you like to know what he found? My father was sweating. Mom looked like she might faint. He found that you two were actually patients of Linda's. Doctor, Chen said. Patricia, you were being treated for depression. Robert, you had anger management issues. You both knew Linda was a single mother with a young daughter and a substantial insurance policy. When Linda died, you somehow obtained false documentation claiming you were Elena's godparents, though no such arrangement existed. You navigated the foster system, adopted her, and gained access to her trust fund. All $500,000. That's slander, Dad hissed. You can't prove any of that. Chen smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. Actually, I can. I have the original insurance documents, showing Elena as the sole beneficiary. I have bank records showing large deposits into your accounts, starting 6 months after the adoption was finalized. I have testimony from Linda's attorney, who says you forged her signature on documents naming you as guardians. She held up a different folder, and I have the real medical records. Linda's family has no history of mental illness. What you showed everyone tonight, those are fabricated. Badly. Richard Park was on his phone. I'm calling our attorney, he said tersely. And the police. Please do, doctor, Chen said. Because I've already filed a report with the San Francisco District Attorney's Office for insurance fraud, forgery, and theft. They're very interested in this case. My mother lunged for her purse, but David's father was faster. Oh no, you're not going anywhere, he said, blocking her path. I was crying openly now, but they weren't tears of humiliation anymore. They were tears of rage and relief and grief for a mother I'd forgotten. All of this, I said, my voice shaking, standing up to face my parents. All of this was for money? You humiliated me in front of everyone, tried to destroy my relationship. My future for what? To extort more money from David's family? You owe us, Mom said viciously, the mask finally dropping. We raised you, fed you, put a roof over your head. With my own money, I shouted. Money my real mother left for me. You stole my inheritance and then had the audacity to demand more. Brittany was crying at her table. She looked at me with such guilt and sorrow. Britt didn't know, Dad said quietly. We never told her the truth about the money. Of course you didn't, I said. Because she's actually your daughter. She's the only one you ever really cared about. Security was approaching now, along with 2 police officers who'd apparently been called by someone. Chen handed them her folder of evidence. Elena, David said softly, pulling me close. I'm so sorry. I don't care about any of this. The money, the lies they told, none of it changes how I feel about you. His mother stepped forward, tears in her eyes. Neither do we, dear. You've done nothing wrong. This is... She looked at my parents with disgust, unconscionable. The police were reading my parents their rights. Something about fraud, theft, extortion. Dad was arguing, but Mom had gone completely silent, her face a mask. Chen approached me carefully. Elena, I know this is overwhelming. We don't have to talk about anything tonight if you don't want to. But I'd very much like to get to know you. If you're willing. You've been looking for me for 23 years? I asked. Every single day, she said. You're the last piece of my sister. I never stopped hoping I'd find you. I hugged her. This stranger who was family, who'd fought to find me, who'd saved me tonight. She smelled like jasmine and felt like safety. My father, I said, pulling back. Michael Rodriguez. Do I have family on his side too? Chen smiled through her tears. You have an uncle in Texas. Miguel. He's been helping me search. And cousins, 3 of them. They all want to meet you. A real family. Blood that actually mattered. Not because of genetics, but because they'd cared enough to find me. David's hand was still in mine. What do you want to do? He asked. We can cancel everything, postpone the wedding, whatever you need. I looked around the ballroom. 100 people staring at us, phones out, probably recording everything. The life I'd thought I had was in shambles. My parents, the people who raised me, were being arrested, but I was standing next to a man who'd just publicly stood by me at my lowest moment. I was meeting an aunt who'd never given up searching for me, and I was finally free of the people who'd stolen 23 years of my life. No, I said firmly. We're not postponing anything. They've taken enough from me. They don't get to take this too. I turned to the crowd, and my voice was steady now. I apologize for the disruption tonight. As you can see, the people who raised me decided to handle some family issues in the most spectacular way possible. But here's what's true. David Park asked me to marry him 3 months ago, and I said yes because I love him. That hasn't changed. None of this changes who I am. David kissed my temple. His parents were smiling. So if you're still willing to celebrate with us, I continued, we'd love for you to stay. And if not, I completely understand. But either way, this engagement is happening. The room erupted in applause. Actual applause. David's business partners, his family friends, even some of the people from my parents' guest list, they were clapping for me. The police led my parents out in handcuffs. My mother was crying now, finally showing real emotion. My father looked at me one last time, and I saw something like regret in his eyes. Too little, too late. Brittany came rushing over. Elena, I swear I didn't know. About the money. About any of it. They just told me you were adopted, that your birth parents were dead. I thought, I know, Britt, I said, hugging her. This isn't on you. You're my sister. That hasn't changed. Even though we're not actually related? She whispered. Family isn't about blood, I said, looking at David, at Dr. Chen, at the Parks who were already treating me like a daughter. It's about who shows up for you, who fights for you, and you've always shown up for me. The party continued, surreally. The band started playing again. People approached me one by one, offering support, congratulations, even a few business cards from attorneys just in case. David's mother pulled me aside and squeezed my hands. You're stronger than you know, she said, and you're going to be a wonderful addition to our family. Chen stayed by my side for the rest of the evening, filling in gaps in my memory, showing me photos of my real mother. Linda Chen had been vibrant, accomplished, beautiful. She'd specialized in treating post-traumatic stress in first responders. She'd published research. She'd saved lives. She'd be so proud of you, Doctor, Chen said. Marketing manager at your age? A good man who loves you? You built a life despite everything. That's extraordinary. I want to know everything, I told her. About her, about my dad, about the family I never knew I had. We have time, she assured me. All the time in the world. Later, after most of the guests had left, and the police had taken statements, David and I stood on the resort's balcony overlooking the harbor. The moon was full, reflecting off the dark water. Are you okay? He asked, wrapping his jacket around my shoulders. I don't know, I admitted. I'm angry. I'm sad. I'm relieved. I'm terrified. I feel like I don't know who I am anymore. You're Elena, he said simply. The woman who makes me laugh, who's brilliant at her job, who cries during dog food commercials and pretends she doesn't. You're the person I want to spend my life with. That's all that matters. What about kids? I asked quietly. When your mom mentioned grandchildren earlier, and my parents said all that stuff about hereditary mental illness, was a complete lie, David interrupted firmly. And even if there were health issues to consider, we'd face them together. That's what marriage means. I leaned into him, feeling the weight of the evening finally catching up with me. We should probably talk about the wedding, I said. After tonight, people are going to talk. The scandal, the arrest, everything that happened. Let them talk, David said. Or better yet, let's give them something else to talk about. Something good. He pulled out his phone and opened Instagram. Before I could stop him, he took a selfie of us on the balcony and started typing. David, what are you doing? Setting the record straight. He showed me the post. The photo was lovely, us looking happy despite everything, the harbor lights twinkling behind us. The caption read, Tonight didn't go as planned. My fiancé learned some difficult truths about her past, but she handled it with more grace and strength than anyone I've ever known. Elena Rodriguez, you are remarkable, and I'm honored to be your future husband. To everyone asking, yes, the wedding is still on, and it's going to be beautiful. Real family truth wins stronger together. You didn't have to do that, I whispered, but I was smiling. Yes, I did, because you deserve to control the narrative, not them. The post went live, and within minutes, comments and likes started flooding in. Most were supportive, many were outraged on my behalf, A few were gossips asking for details. But overwhelmingly, people were on our side. Chen found us a little while later. I should probably head back to the city, she said. But Elena, I meant what I said. I'd love for us to get to know each other. No pressure, no expectations. Family. I'd like that, I said. Maybe lunch next week? You can tell me more about my mom. I'd love nothing more. She hugged me again, this time longer. Your mother used to say that resilience isn't about never falling down. It's about getting back up stronger. You did that tonight, Elena. You got back up. After she left, David and I went back inside. The ballroom was nearly empty now, just cleaning staff and a few stragglers. Brittany was sitting alone at a table, looking lost. Come on, I said to her. You're staying with us tonight. We'll figure everything else out tomorrow. What about Mom and Dad? She asked quietly. They made their choices, I said. They'll have to live with the consequences. But you're 19 years old, Britt. You get to make your own choices. Starting now. The three of us left the resort together, David, Brittany, and me. Outside, the valet brought David's car around. As we were getting in, I looked back at the building one last time. 12 hours ago, I'd been nervous about making a good impression on David's extended family. I'd been worried about the future, about fitting into his world, about whether I was enough. Now? Now I knew exactly who I was. I was Elena Rodriguez, daughter of Linda Chen and Michael Rodriguez. I was a marketing manager who'd built her own career. I was David Park's fiancé. I was Brittany's sister, not by blood but by choice. I was a survivor, and I was done letting anyone make me feel small. 3 weeks later, the police formally charged Robert and Patricia with insurance fraud, forgery, theft, and attempted extortion. Their attorney tried to negotiate a plea deal, but the DA wasn't interested. With Dr. Chen's evidence and testimony from my real mother's attorney, the case was airtight. I didn't attend the arraignment. I was too busy planning my wedding. Chen, I'd started calling her Aunt Sarah, introduced me to Uncle Miguel via video call. He cried when he saw me, said I looked just like my father. He had photos, dozens of them, of my dad's childhood in Texas, of family gatherings I'd never known existed. He promised to fly out for the wedding with his kids. David and I decided to keep the wedding date. Why wait? We'd already proven we could handle a crisis together. Everything else would be easy by comparison. The ceremony was beautiful. Small and intimate, just close family and friends. Aunt Sarah walked me down the aisle since my real father couldn't be there. She wore Linda's pearls, and she told me my mother would have loved David. Brittany was my maid of honor. She'd moved into her own apartment with help from David's parents, who'd basically adopted her too. She was starting community college in the fall, figuring out who she was beyond our parents' expectations. My parents' case made the news. Local reporters covered the trial, especially once details emerged about how they'd systematically stolen from a 5-year-old orphan. The judge sentenced them to 7 years in federal prison for fraud and theft. They'd have to pay restitution too, every penny they'd stolen, plus interest. I don't know if they ever understood the real harm they caused. It wasn't about the money, though that mattered. It was about the 23 years of lies, the stolen identity, the fact that they'd erased my mother's memory and replaced it with shame. But sitting at my wedding reception, surrounded by David's family and my newfound relatives, watching Aunt Sarah dance with Uncle Miguel, seeing Brittany laugh with my new cousins, I realized something important. They didn't win. They tried to take everything from me, tried to humiliate me, tried to reduce me to a transaction worth $200,000. But I was still here, still standing, still loved, still Elena Rodriguez. And that was the best revenge of all, living well, loving deeply, and refusing to let their cruelty define me. David pulled me onto the dance floor as our song played. "What are you thinking about?" he asked, holding me close. "That I'm glad your mom insisted on hiring a videographer for the engagement party," I said, laughing. "The police said that footage was key evidence. Always a silver lining," he agreed. "Though next time, let's just take a vacation instead of having a party. Somewhere, far away. With no family drama. Just us," he said, kissing me softly. "Forever." I kissed him back, and in that moment, surrounded by the family I'd found and the love I'd built, I finally felt like I was home. Not the home I'd grown up in, with its foundations built on lies and stolen money, but the home I'd chosen, the family I'd claimed, the life I'd fought for. And no one could take that away from me.